Hear the legends old and new. Wisdom flow like rivers true. Share your heart, the stories thrive. In this cast we're all alive. Oh.
What is up, everybody? This is Chase, and welcome back to the Wellness Center podcast, where we are destigmatizing mental health one episode at a time. Everybody, I am so grateful that you are tuning in to listen to yet another amazing story of trials and struggles and resilience and amazingness and everything that my guest has to offer. Guys, the guy that we have on today is legit. Seriously, once I go into his epic introduction and talk about some of his credentials, you're really going to understand just the powerhouse, the force that we have on the show today. This guy seriously has lived a life worth living, and I am so excited to hear more of his story. Guys, before I go into my epic introduction for my amazing guest, I do just have a couple of things I want to go over with you. Most likely this episode's going to be coming out around Christmas time, so I just want to say a big Merry Christmas, a Happy Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, Feliz Navidad to whoever is listening to the show. If I missed one of the ways to celebrate your national holiday, please forgive me, but enjoy your holiday. Around this time, I'm most likely going to have a new baby girl, a third, and I'll be dead exhausted, so you might not hear from me for a little while, but super grateful for the opportunity to be with this guy today. Guys, I've got two huge asks for you. They're the same ones I ask every episode, and I'll continue to do so because I think it's so important. The first, guys, is to join the Wellness Center tribe, right? If you're not already a part of the Wellness Center tribe, you can join one of two ways. It's very easy. It's totally free. If you're on YouTube, all you have to do is hit that subscribe button. If you are listening on an Apple or Spotify or any sort of podcasting platform, any sort of follow button, notification button means the absolute world to me. By joining the tribe, not only are you joining the drive to destigmatize mental health and support the advocacy for mental health, but you're also helping more people find the show. So it means the absolute world to me if you guys would be willing to do that, and my guests as well. My second big ask, guys, is as you're listening to this episode today, I invite you to share this episode with at least one person that you know can benefit from the lessons that are going to be taught today. The cool part about being a human and living a human experience is that there are going to be other people that you know that have similar experiences to my guests. So please share it with them, not only so they can empathize and connect with my guest, but also so that they can get some lessons and skills that have helped someone find high levels of success. So guys, without further ado, I'm really excited. I want to bring on my guest today because he is absolutely phenomenal, guys. So by way of epic introduction, my guest has over 36 years of experience in meditative and martial arts, teaching the transformative power of these practices. He is the founder of the Northwest Fighting Arts Portland Tai Chi Academy and the Yielding Warrior, focusing on the art of yielding. He is a published author with 3 books and hundreds of instructional videos guiding thousands of students worldwide. He's the creator of the Yielding Warrior online program, bringing his expertise to a global audience, and he's dedicated to helping individuals unlock their potential through meditative and martial arts mastery. So without further ado, we have the one and the only Jeff Patterson on the show. Jeff, how are you doing today?
That's quite the introduction, sir. Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, sir,
great.
It's my pleasure. Good. And so I'm curious, I was looking at your bio a little bit. I know that you said you had a black belt in a couple of different martial arts forms. What forms do you have those black belts in?
So not all of the martial arts that I do have belt systems. However, ones that I have an equivalent of a black belt in would be Kempo, Muay Thai. I'm fairly been studying Western boxing for over 30 years. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Kali, which is a Filipino martial art, or Eskrima, and then Tai Chi and Qigong.
Wow, that's that. So I'm curious as to what got you interested in practicing so many different types of martial arts.
I started out, I'd always kind of wanted to do martial arts, and I started out doing Kempo and kickboxing at a local community martial arts studio.
Okay.
And I met a amazing teacher who was like an encyclopedia of knowledge when it came to martial arts. And he started opening my eyes to many different fields and kind of got me inspired to really follow this path and start
Mhm.
getting into all of those different areas.
That's really interesting. And was it like you'd go and you would do, because I know to get a level of a black belt, and some of the martial arts that I'm familiar with, right? It's a 3, 5, 10 year journey. Is it something that you would spend those few years, get that level or similar level of mastery and then move on to the next one? Or would you get a mastery, incorporate those practices in a different martial art and just continue to build on what you had?
Yeah, so a lot of them I was practicing simultaneously.
Hmm.
It wasn't like a hobby I was doing a couple days a week. It was something that I was a lifestyle I was living. I
Hmm.
practiced every day and was doing things. Some of the martial arts, like in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, when I first started doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, there was no black belts in the area that I live in. And so I
Hmm.
had to travel to find people to train with. And it actually took me 17 years to get a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Wow.
uh, in the Eskrima and Kali, it took me an equivalent of about 20 years to get to a guru level, which is a first degree black belt. And then in the Tai Chi and Qigong to get to a Sifu level, which is the equivalent of a black belt,
Hmm.
would be probably around 20 to 25 years. I don't know the exact mark, what it was, because it's been a bit, but
Yeah.
those arts took a long time, and it wasn't like in Kempo, I got my black belt in 3 years. It was it
Yeah.
was pretty. It's a whole different idea, though. A Kempo black belt's a lot different than a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. So,
Oh, for sure.
um, but but yeah, they've all been great, and I've learned from all of them, and I've been very fortunate to have some amazing teachers along the way, and got to train with some pretty incredible people.
Yeah, absolutely. And were you doing all of this, I know, as a lifestyle? Was it so that did you know that you were going to kind of get to this point in your life where you were a published author with like deep understanding of the world and the universe and you wanted to share that? Were you wanting to do all of this to compete, like, in a more athletic combative field? What was kind of the goal with doing all of these different practices?
At a younger age, I got into it because I was just always intrigued by martial arts, and I thought, how
Yeah.
cool is that? It was just seemed like so interesting. And then I got into just the challenge and the physical part of it and the strategy behind it. And then I met somebody who told me, is one of my mentors and teachers back then. He said, "You want to create a life and not make a living." And I was one of the first kids in my whole extended family to go through college. I got 2 degrees in less than 4 years. I worked pretty hard, and everybody in my family thought I was going to go out and get some big important job. And I got done with college, and I decided I was going to start up my own martial arts academy. And everybody was kind of saying for years, like, when are you going to get a real job? When are you going to do something with your degree? And
Mhm.
because it took a while to make this academy successful. It wasn't like an overnight success story. And so they didn't see the potential in what it could be. And for myself, I wasn't doing it for the potential and what it could be. I just loved the practice, and I was
Mhm.
following my passion because I thought about sitting behind a desk and doing something I didn't want to do, or being able to share my passion with people. It just wasn't even a question, no matter what the difference in the salary was.
Yeah, I love that. And I think developing passions, like you're talking about, and learning where you're supposed to be in life, that starts from a really, really young age, right? From our earliest time. So I think that segues perfectly into my first question, Jeff. So I would love for you to take us back to a young Jeff Patterson. When did you start struggling, or what was life like for you with mental health when you were very young?
You know, I was brought up in a single parent family
Hmm.
with a mom who was struggling. We were in HUD housing. I used to go to the store with food stamps. I was always embarrassed to show that I didn't have money to buy things, like a lot of
Yeah.
my friends. And, I'd always felt like there was something in me that wanted more than that, but I had no idea how I would ever get it or where it was coming from. But my grandpa, who has always been a pillar in my life,
Hmm.
he always used to tell me growing up, study hard and you can do anything you want to do. You can make happen whatever you want. And I've kind of always had those words in my head, giving me the belief in myself that I can do this no matter what struggles came up.
Hmm.
And that helped me get through all of those years when everybody was telling me that you can't do it. That's not going to work. You need to do
Yeah.
something else, and so that's kind of where the turning point was.
Yeah, that's awesome. So at what point in your youth did you decide that you were interested in martial arts or that you kind of got into those classes you were talking about?
So I'd always been intrigued by them and thought they were
Hmm.
cool as a youngster, but being in the situation I was, we didn't have money to go and do a martial art class. And so I waited until I was a teenager and I got a job and I went out and got my own lessons and started training and kind of doing it on my own. And that's how I got introduced to the martial arts.
That's really cool. And getting into martial arts. So I know that, and I'm assuming I'm putting some words in your mouth here, so please correct me if I'm wrong, but growing up in a single family home on food stamps, there was a lot of struggles and probably a lot of like there was a lack of confidence that you might have had in yourself. How do you feel that like getting into the martial arts as a teenager, how do you feel like that helped change your perspective of yourself and the world around you?
Oh, for sure. And as a young guy growing up without a father, you don't have that person that's kind of, you know, strong in your life who's telling you, how to be a man, and how
Hmm.
to come out and kind of be into your own. And so definitely as a young guy, I did lack the confidence, and martial arts and having good mentors in the martial arts and good teachers, they help bring that out in me and help me find that in myself. And so the martial arts was definitely part of my growth and helped me find a way to really focus and come into who I am.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you feel like the high level of respect and obedience that they typically have and set standards for inside of dojos and different training centers like that, was that a hard transition for you um, to show up in that respectful way for your senseis?
You know, in the beginning, no, because it was so new, but I did have a problem with authority. And, I growing up where I did,
Hmm.
I knew that if I ever wanted to get out, I had to do something. And so
Yeah.
I joined the Marine Corps when I was 17.
Hmm.
And that was extremely hard in that I always question authority. And
Yeah.
when you're a young Marine, you can't do anything. You don't open your mouth, you just follow orders.
Hmm.
And so that was a different way of life for me. However, it helped me find a little bit of focus and realize that I needed to listen more and have some discipline. And then when I got out of the Marine Corps and was going through college and continuing my martial arts training,
Hmm.
that's where I really found that discipline and that desire to push myself.
That's really good. That's amazing. And so I'm curious, I feel like we're really getting to this point that the second question can come into play here, which is your hero's journey. Right. So for those just listening for the first time or needs a quick refresher, the hero's journey is essentially like an extreme moment or a pivotal trial or something that really required Jeff that called him up to be a better person. So I'm curious, Jeff, what was this hero's journey in your life that you had to undertake?
I think for me, it was coming to the meditative arts.
Okay.
And as a young guy, I was very much into Western boxing.
Mhm.
And I used to go to a boxing gym just a few blocks down the street here from my academy. I love the thrill of the sport and the challenge, and everything about it was fun for me. And I used to
Mhm.
go to the gym 5, 6 days a week. At a boxing gym, for those of you that aren't familiar with them, they run them a lot different than your traditional style of athletic class that you would go to, say, at a health club where there's a teacher and then a group of students following along. In a boxing gym, there is usually 4 or 5 coaches, and they all have a few fighters that they're working with. Well,
Mhm.
at this one particular gym, one of the coaches there was a very well-known coach. He had created champions at both the amateur and professional level, and I really wanted to get to spend some time with him. However, his card was full. He didn't really have any room to take on any new students or fighters, and so I would always show up at the gym when I knew he was going to be there. I'd work hard. I'd try to get him to notice me, and after following him around for about 3 or 4 months, he finally started giving me some tips and showing me a few things and working with me a little bit. And, then he said something to me at about the 2 or 3 week mark of getting to work with him that changed my life forever. And that he said, if you really want to be a good boxer, you should start doing meditation and Tai Chi. Now, at the time, I'm this 19-year-old kid thinking, isn't Tai Chi for like old people in the park? How's that going to help me be a better fighter?
Right.
And I had a lot of respect for him, and I knew he was trying to help me, so I took on the practice.
Mhm.
And not only has it changed my life in many ways, but through the years, I've had over 26,000 students come through the academy, and I've heard hundreds of stories of how the meditative arts has positively influenced people's lives. And that's what's made me so passionate about trying to get this message out there. And it's what inspired me to write my last couple books and create my online programs and my teacher training programs, because just trying to get this message out there and show people that they can use meditation and it can be very beneficial to them.
Yeah, I'm curious. So you're 19, and thank you for sharing, by the way. I'm really excited to talk about yielding, right? Which I know is what you mentioned on your website. This process of Tai Chi, what was that like for you getting into it? When was there that big revelation, essentially, or sorry, let me rephrase the question. So what I was meaning to ask is, like, how do you feel Tai Chi helped with your boxing? Because I'm a boxer, right? I've done boxing for years. I love it, all Western style. And I'm curious about how that actually helped you improve.
So at first, I didn't want to do Tai Chi. I didn't want to do meditation. I just wanted to be a better boxer,
Mhm.
and so when he told me that, I wasn't real psyched about the idea of doing the practice. But everything he gave me, whether he was telling me to keep my elbow down or he was telling me to turn my head, whatever he would give me, I would drill it over. I'd treat it like it was gold. I really
Mhm.
put that time and effort into it. Well, when I started doing the meditation practice and I told him I would do it, he wanted me to do a half an hour a day of Tai Chi and a half an hour a day of sitting meditation.
Mhm.
And because I always tried to do a little more, I said, well, I'm going to do an hour of Tai Chi and I'm going to do a half an hour of sitting.
Mhm.
And so every day, like I was brushing my teeth, I was doing my meditation practice. And, the last thing I wanted to do was go to the boxing gym and have him ask me if I did my practice today and have to tell him no. So
Right.
I did it every day. And he showed me the first couple movements of a Tai Chi form in the first couple weeks,
Mhm.
and then kind of let it settle in and didn't show me anything else for quite a while. And 3 or 4 months starts rolling around, and I'm thinking, man, is this guy ever going to show me anything? What am I doing this for? I didn't make the connection, and I kept doing the practice. I was really enjoying getting to work with him at the gym and
Mhm.
focus on my boxing. And so I kept up with my meditation training. And then one day, maybe around the 7 or 8 month mark of doing this practice, I go down into my basement to do my meditation training. And I looked up at the clock, and an hour and a half had gone by, and it felt like 15 minutes. And I
Mhm.
just had this euphoric rush or sensation, and I didn't know what happened. I didn't know what was going on, but I knew I wanted it to happen again. And so
Mhm.
then I stopped looking at it like it was a chore that I had to do every day, and I
Mhm.
started looking forward to it. And from that point forward, I really started getting deeper into the meditative arts and really exploring all of the many different directions of the practice. Now, when you ask how did it help your boxing, with any kind of meditation practice, there's really 5 directions that you can take the practice.
Okay.
There's the athletic side of the practice that improves your performance, it improves your timing, it improves your present state of mind, your ability to be connected in the body and be able to notice all of the little subtle energetic expressions and how to be fine-tuned and sharpen what you're doing. And that's why so many professional athletes these days are turning to the meditative arts to help improve their performance. Then
Mhm.
you have the therapeutic side of the training, which is good for your longevity and your health. You have the medical side of the training, the philosophical side, and then also the meditative or spiritual side. And
Mhm.
as you're taking on a practice like this, you could follow any one of those paths. And so those are some of the ways and kind of how it can help you in a physical sport.
That's really cool. So I'm interested as someone that came from the physical sports side of things and was doing the Tai Chi and meditation, how did you get to this big revelation on yielding? And when you say that, what was the revelation that made that word so powerful for you?
Well, for me, at some point along the way, and maybe it was a few years into my meditation practice, I really started developing a passion for the philosophical side of the training
Mhm.
and understanding how to use these concepts in every area of your life, because that's a big part of the practice. There's many different philosophical concepts that come with this practice, yielding being one of them. It's been used in the meditative and martial arts for generations.
Mhm.
And yielding is a concept that can be applied in many different angles. And so in my most recent book, The Yielding Warrior, I break down yielding into three categories. There's physical yielding, mental yielding, and emotional yielding.
Okay.
Physical yielding is the idea that I push you, you push me, whoever's the bigger, stronger person with the most leverage eventually is going to push the other person over.
Mhm.
But with yielding, instead of us trying to see who the bigger meathead is, when you push me, I get out of the way of that force. And
Mhm.
now I can respond with less effort. So I'm not
Mhm.
trying to butt heads with you and see if I'm bigger and stronger than you. Now, in athletics, this is extremely valuable because you can't always say that you're going to be the strongest person that you're coming up against, whether it's basketball, football, the combat sports, whatever it is.
There's always someone bigger and better.
Exactly. And you've got to learn how to deal with that overpowering force. And in order to be good at physical yielding, you need to be well rooted. The lower part of your body needs to be strong and flexible so you can change your central equilibrium without getting tight.
Mhm.
The body has to be relaxed, the breath has to be calm, and the mind has to be present. Now, while this may be a lifetime journey to really master these skills, from day one, by starting meditation and integrating these practices, we start to see these things at a deeper level and become more aware of them inside of ourselves. And this is where it becomes very interesting because not only do we see these things more clearly in ourselves, but
Mhm.
we also start to see them more clearly in other people. And this is where we're moving into what I call mental yielding.
Mhm.
So, say, for example, you and I are having a conversation
Mhm.
and I say something that unsettles you, and I pick up on it from that first imbalance. It's a
Mhm.
lot easier at this point to adjust the conversation and keep us in a happy place than if I'm not paying attention to that. And pretty soon I'm so far off track, you want to knock me upside the head. And so, learning how to use yielding in all of our interactions is extremely powerful.
Mhm.
One, we're being more considerate, which is something that we could all do more of. And two, it allows us to be strategic in our interactions to
Mhm.
guide conversations to a positive outcome with the least amount of resistance, which is great for relationships, business, sales, negotiations. I mean, there's so many different ways that we can apply this idea. Then we have our third pillar, which is emotional yielding. And emotional yielding is very much like mental yielding, but with our own interpersonal conflicts. So you think about oftentimes something will happen to us and we'll respond and we'll go down this path. And we might get an hour, a day, a week down that road and realize, maybe that wasn't the best choice. But with yielding and our heightened awareness by integrating meditation into our lives, we're able to sit back and be centered and not let our emotions get involved and be more balanced in our decision making, and oftentimes make a more educated choice that saves us a lot of heartache on the other side. Now, I've been explaining this idea of yielding for many years. I've been running my academy for 30 years now.
Mhm.
And one of the most common things I'll hear people say when I'm talking to them about this is that, yielding makes a lot of sense. But, I feel like I use yielding all the time. And
Mhm.
now I would agree in that I think everybody does some degree of yielding all the time, whether they
Mhm.
recognize it as that label or not.
Mhm.
However, it's kind of like if you or I were to walk into a crime scene with a detective who's been on the job for 30 years,
Mhm.
I guarantee you that person would see things about the series of events in the timeline that I know at least I would have no clue of.
Yeah.
And the meditative arts helps us see things inside of ourselves and inside of other people that I truly believe without this practice, you'll never have as deep of an understanding of these awarenesses and this ability to read yourself and others.
I love that. And I think that is so true. I think meditation is so incredibly powerful. It's one of the things that I use in my practice, right, in my life and my growth. I'm curious though, and again, guys, just so for the listeners, right, we've been talking about skills, right? And Jeff, I love mentioning this. You know how I said that all these questions flow very naturally? They just do. It's really cool. But so the skill of meditative practice to learn yielding, what are some basic skills, tools, principles that someone can take? Like, let's say they pause the show or the show ends, they put their phone down and they want to practice meditation. What are the skills that they're going to need to know, or some basic ones that you teach that can help those people start this practice?
So the first and most important thing is understanding the basics of the practice and knowing that it's not just sitting in lotus and breathing. When you're studying a meditative practice, it's really a way of life. And there's I've broken down into 5 core fundamental principles that anybody taking on a meditation practice, whether it's Tai Chi, Qigong, yoga, sitting meditation, standing meditation, you have to cultivate these 5 areas to develop a solid practice that's going to enrich your life. And they are regulating the body, regulating the breath, regulating the mind, regulating the energy, and regulating the spirit. Briefly, I'll talk about what I mean when I say this.
Okay.
So, regulating the body is the easiest one to do and one that we usually start with. It's basically the idea that we pay attention to our skeletal alignment and our muscular tension in the body. And an example would be if, say, you've been sitting down at your computer for 3 or 4 hours and your shoulders are rounded forward and you're feeling lethargic and maybe your neck's getting sore and you're feeling very depleted. And then another time when maybe the most important person in your world walks in the room and your body perks up and you feel this energetic rush like you're on top of the world. Well, we are in 100% control of these 2 different states every day, all the time. Now, the idea is how are we living our lives? Are we spending most of our time in that depleted state? And this is the basic idea of regulating the body. And on a little deeper level, it is how are we maintaining some sort of muscular structure in the body, keeping some level of flexibility, eating a healthy diet so we have good energy, and then keeping enough sleep so we have the energy throughout the day. And these are all kind of categorized in this body regulation. Then we have regulating the breath. And regulating the breath is a very deep topic, and it's something that you'll study for the rest of your life if you take on a meditation practice. In Qigong, oftentimes it's referred to as the science of the breath because there's literally hundreds of different breathing strategies. And because of this, we broadly categorize them into yin methods and yang methods.
Mhm.
And the yin methods are often deeper, more holistic style of meditations that help us bring that energy inward. And an example of this would be If you ever listen to somebody sleep, their natural breathing pattern is a longer inhale and a shorter exhale. And this is the body's natural way of bringing your conscious mind into your subconscious mind, which is where we are when we're sleeping and dreaming. And so, if we want to emulate this style of energetic expression in our meditations, we can do longer inhales, soft retentions at the end of the inhale, and shorter exhales. And this helps bring our energy inward, which is great for stress reduction, dealing with anxiety, panic attacks, boosting our creativity. There's lots of different ways that we can use this idea.
Mhm.
Then we have the yang side of the breath, which is more aggressive. It's kind of like if you ever had to push your car, you pick up something heavy, your natural instinct is to use the exhale, maybe put tension in the breath, maybe make the breath audible, and this helps generate energy and expand it outward. Now, when we start learning how to use the breath as a strategy, and in Chinese philosophy, they call this balancing the kan and li, or the water and fire, we now have the tools to adjust our physical, mental, and emotional outcomes throughout the day. We all go through the day with emotional ups and downs. Some people are like a roller coaster, others may be a little more balanced. But when you start to recognize these imbalances and say you're starting to get excited, we can use the yin side of the breath to help bring us back down. And when we feel ourselves starting to get depleted, we can use the yang side to help pick us back up. And so it helps us find a little more stable, even balance throughout the day. Then we have regulating the mind, the third regulation. Regulating the mind, as with the breath, is a very deep practice and something that is a lifetime journey, and one of the most common things that I hear people say that are coming to the practice is that I've tried meditation before, but it just didn't work for me. I couldn't quiet my mind. And somewhere along the way, people got this misguided idea that in order to be successful in meditation, you have to reach this state of nirvana and have nothing bother you. Well, they couldn't be further from the truth. I've spent the last 36 years of my life traveling around the world, training with some really amazing meditation practitioners.
Mhm.
And I have never once met anybody who doesn't get distracted. It's just part of humanity. We've got to learn to live with it, right?
We've got a
And
human
so,
brain.
yeah. And so when you understand this, now when you're doing your meditation practice and say you're sitting for 20 minutes, you may get distracted 50 times during that session. And every time you get distracted, you use your posture, your breath, or your movement, if it's a movement practice, to help bring you back to focus. Now you just got 50 repetitions of being out of balance and off center and bringing it back to a centered state. And if you do this every day, every month, every year, you start to develop this power and this ability to, no matter if somebody says something to throw you off your game or you have a stressful day at work, you're able to bring yourself back to that focused state without being too distracted and too far down that negative path. There's this story that I really enjoy about these two old monks, and they're walking down this dirt road after a big rainstorm,
Mhm.
and they come up to this big mud puddle, and on the other side of the puddle is this beautiful little girl, and she's standing there in a white dress, and she's crying. And the older monk, he yells across the puddle and says, "Is everything okay? Can we help you?" She looks up and says, "I need to be somewhere, but if I walk across this puddle, I'm going to get my dress all dirty." So he rolls up his pant legs and he walks across the puddle and picks her up, puts her on his back, takes her to the other side and sets her down, and she's off on her way.
Mhm.
Well, him and the younger monk are walking a couple miles down the road, and finally the younger monk says, he's just furious at this point. He's like, we're not supposed to touch girls, but yet you did back there at the puddle. And the older monk looks down and says, "You're still thinking about that girl? I left her back there at the puddle." And how many times in life do we have to get 2 miles down the muddy road before we realize that we need to let this thing go? And
Yeah.
so understanding how to regulate the mind is a very important part of the practice. And then the fourth regulation is regulating the energy. And this is a very deep topic and something that we could literally talk for hours about, but I'll just give you a basic understanding, is that once you have reached a competent level in regulating the body, the breath, and the mind, you now have the tools to lead the energy in the body and bring it inward, to extend it outward, to circulate it in the body, to get different energetic expressions through your meditation practice. And then the last regulation is regulating the spirit. And this is a very profound, deep idea, and something that meditation masters will spend their entire life's journey searching for that ultimate state of enlightenment.
Mhm.
But you can see by understanding these underlying principles of any meditation practice that when you cultivate these areas, they can positively change and affect everything you do in life.
Yeah, which is so true. They absolutely can. Like you're saying, if you can get control of your mind, your body, your energy levels, your awareness, all your spirit, your soul, how could you not take on anything in this world and be okay? Yeah, I absolutely love that. That's so profound. Thank you so much for sharing that. How long did it take you to develop those five core areas that need to be developed, these foundations?
I've heard that idea before through one of my teachers of these five areas, but
Hmm.
it's been my whole journey to really understand them and to be able to express them in the way that I'm expressing them to you right now. Because when
Yeah.
you hear the term five regulations, regulate the body, the breath, the mind, the energy, the spirit, what does that really mean if you don't spend 100 hours thinking about it?
Right.
It really takes some time to understand and cultivate those, but that's nothing that I made up, and that's not something that is new from me.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, and I love that you mentioned that yoga and or sorry, meditation is not just the lotus, eyes closed, deep breathing style thing. I've always believed that meditation is the practice of focus on a singular thing, right? Whether you're standing, sitting, walking, doing the dishes, practicing Tai Chi, as long as you're focusing and bringing your mind back to where you're at, like you're saying, getting those repetitions, meditation can really be anything as long as it's that singular focus.
So when I talk about the meditative arts, I think there's a lot of different directions and pools that you can put into that category, like you're talking about. I think a lot of what you're talking about right now is mindfulness and being present in what we're doing, which is part of a meditation journey.
Mhm.
However, I think there's times like, I break down a meditation practice into three pillars. We have ritual practices, active practices, and philosophical practices.
Mhm.
The ritual practices are when you want to just have time to look inward.
Mhm.
And it's hard to look inward when you're washing the dishes or you're walking down the side of a mountain because you got to pay attention to where the boulders are and where you don't twist your ankle, right? And
Right.
while I think those are times where we can be present and we can practice our mindful states that
Mhm.
help our meditation practice, then the ritual time is when you are doing a movement form like a qigong set or a tai chi form or a sitting or standing meditation where you can really turn your focus inward through the movement or through the breath or through the posture.
Mhm.
Then in the active practices, they would be more like what you were referring to, where
Mhm.
we could integrate this stuff into our day-to-day activities and it still improve these levels of awareness that cultivate a meditation practice.
Yeah.
And then the third pillar is the philosophical side of the training, where we integrate these different sayings or these different ideas like yielding into our active and ritual practices. And if we cultivate all three of those areas, that's kind of like the foundation of our evolving life practice with the meditation.
That's really cool. Dude, that's so cool. So, yeah, thank you so much for sharing all of that beautiful knowledge. I know personally, I'm going to go back and listen to you probably 20 or 30 times to really take in everything you're talking about and learn about it. So, thank you. So, I'm curious, looking back at your life and everything you've had to go through, your life, your experiences, your struggles, all of the training, the hardships, the military, what can you appreciate about your entire journey?
One of the things that I'm always been grateful for, and I'm not sure exactly where it came from, but I've always had a discipline in me
Mhm.
to be consistent and to follow through with what I tell myself I'm going to do.
Yeah,
And I think without having that discipline, I never would have gotten to the level of awareness in the practice that I have. And so I think that would probably be the number one thing I'm grateful for.
that's amazing. Yeah, discipline is so incredibly important. Um, do you know of any skills or tools that people can use? Right, because I'm one of those people that, while I do feel like I have a decent level of discipline, I am a justify king, right? Justify the next Oreo, justify the extra 5 minutes of sleep, right? What are some tools to help people develop better discipline?
Integrating an evolving life practice with meditation
Hmm.
is, I think, essential. It will give you the discipline to feed over into everything you do in life, and having a good, strong why that motivates you. So you start looking at your meditation practice as something you get to do, and it's not a chore that you have to do. And by
Yeah.
developing this consistency that you do every day and using that discipline and that integrity and that perseverance that you gain from doing this thing on a day-to-day basis and seeing how those qualities affect everything you do in life, and then finding yourself a guide that helps you navigate the waters so you can follow your approach and get where you want to be in the shortest amount of time. There's so many. You could go onto YouTube and see a million videos out there on this practice and that practice, and I've never once met anybody who's self-taught in the meditation arena that has any depth of understanding. And, firsthand here at the academy, I've seen people come in here that are fairly disciplined, that have been self-taught, and they've been training 15, even 20 years. And they'll come into the academy and see somebody else who's only been here for a year that's way deeper into the practice because they've had a focus and a guide and has somebody showing them how to get deeper into the practice. And so,
Mhm.
your life is short and time is valuable. Having somebody to help point you along the way can really get you to that point where you start to appreciate the practice rather than looking at it like a chore.
I love that. And I think that's so important to have a mentor, especially in something that's so pivotal and so important in people's lives. So I know that was great advice, but I'm curious, do you have any other advice for people just getting into the realm of mental health?
I think that it's important to do something for yourself that is positive every day. If you're very depressed and you sit in a dark room every day, then you're going to be feeling that way over and over again until you find things. And if you don't have anything right now, maybe you're still sitting in that dark room every day. Think back over the last couple years, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, whatever that is for you, about as many times as you can, about things that made you laugh, about things that gave you pleasure, anything that you did that brought something of value into your life. And then once a day, 3 times a day, go out and do one of those things. Start integrating that stuff back into your day, because if you keep, one of my old teachers, he told me, he said, you always do what you always did, you always get what you always got. And if you're sitting in a dark room every day and you're feeling depressed and you keep sitting in the dark room, how are you going to expect anything else? You got
Yeah,
to change what you're doing, and really there's easy moves that you can make that can help point you down that positive direction.
I love that. That is great advice. Thank you so much. Jeff, thank you so much for coming on and taking time out of your busy schedule to come on my show to really share some really beautiful truths about meditation and life and discipline and practices. Again, thank you so much.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure, man. And everyone, thank you so much for tuning in up to this point in the show. It means the absolute world to us. So, Jeff, I'm curious for those people that are like, "Wow, I want to buy his book. I want to know more about his academy that he's doing." Where can people find you? Where can people find information about all this stuff?
So my website is theyieldingwarrior.com. Right now, I'm giving a free copy of my book away. If you just pay for shipping and handling, you could go to theyieldingwarrior.com/book, and we'll send you out a copy of the book. Also, on that website, you can get involved in our online training program that teaches you how to build an evolving life practice with the meditative arts. There's a 2-week trial up with that. And then we also have our teacher training program up there. So for those of you that want to learn how to integrate this stuff and learn how to hand it down to other people and help us spread the word, there's that option there as well.
Okay, awesome, guys. And of course, that link will be in the description. So please make sure go buy Jeff's book because he deserves to get paid for it. And go look at his programs because obviously what he has done has proven successful for himself and for thousands of other people. Jeff, last time, thank you so much, man. I really appreciate you. And everyone, thank you so much for tuning in again. It means the world to me. If you haven't already, please make sure to join the Wellness Center tribe by hitting that subscribe and follow button. And if you haven't, I please invite you to share this episode with someone that you know could benefit from the episode. And I know at least one or two people I'm going to send this to because I know that the meditation practices are so important and learning about the importance and the foundations of them is huge. So, yeah, we'll definitely be sending this episode out. Guys, just so you know, I'm always looking for guests as well. So if you'd like to come on the show and be a guest, understand that no story is too big, no name is too small. If you have a story, I want to share it all. You can reach out to me. My email is chase@thewellnesscenter.life. Again, that's Chase, just like the bank, @thewellnesscenter.life. And if you want to know more about what I'm doing on my day-to-day basis, you can go to www.thewellnesscenter.life, where I use full body pulsing red light therapy to recalibrate every single cell in your body, one session at a time. Guys, thank you again for tuning in. We really appreciate it. We hope you have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you on the flip side. Peace out.